Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Autistic Radio and Harry's Sunday 555 show, which, as always, is sponsored by colpack.co.uk. If you need cryotherapy for your physiotherapy, chiropractic or osteopathic practice, colpack.co.uk is the place to go, and they help us. When you use them, we benefit. Harry, let's get on with the show.
Thanks, Jules. Hello, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 25th of January 2026. And this is where we talk about the posts that have been shared on the autisticradio.com Facebook page. And today, in Scotland and some parts of the world, is Burns Day. And the first post is in relation to that. And it's from Aurora Consulting, who are a disability service business consultant. Aurora is an autistic-owned business offering organisations bespoke training and consulting based in Scotland. Happy Burns Night to all who celebrate. I grew up taking part in Burns poetry competitions. For me, poetry is meant to be read aloud to be fully enjoyed. And Scots poetry is a brilliant expression of our culture and language. Scots is a beautiful, expressive language, full of broad words. It was a huge interest to me as a child, and I still love it. As a teacher, I ran a poetry reading afternoons each year with Burns bookmarks for all participants and gave them a range of poems they could choose from small 4 to 5 line poems to longer, more complicated ones, and a variety of ways to participate. I love sharing a Burns supper too. Veggie haggis is awfully good when shared with your pals. Do you have a favourite Scots poem? What's people's thoughts?
McGonagall, who one of the worst poets ever, and he was Scottish.
Yeah, and didn't Monty Python sort of satirise him with the guy who wrote these poems all about like loans? You know, could you see me right with 10 quid? I've got a divvy coming in the post.
Yeah, they did. Although I have my roots generations back in Scotland, but I'm not these people that goes around pretending that he's Scottish just because my great grandfather was.
Oh yeah, the Rod Stewart School.
Mm.
I didn't like poetry as a child myself, although I did later start to write poetry later on as a way of expression, especially when things were quite intense. And I did that through a local creative writers group. But Burns himself, his work, I always found sometimes interesting, but sometimes used as so stereotypical it was offensive. But now I really enjoy it, not for what it is, but just sharing of that occasion. How people enjoy such an occasion and how it can be enjoyed in many different ways. I mean, the stereotypical way, or I should say, the so called normal way of enjoying a Burns night is actually going out somewhere, like a pub or a club, and being amongst people, that sort of socialising thing, and reading a poem out, while having that traditional haggis and neeps meal. But what kind of got me on this post was about poetry itself and how I came in touch with poetry, as I just said, about as a way of expression. And you look at different poems, whether you like them or not, it's all different expressions, and they've all got their own techniques, their own language, their own words, of course, and their own styles. And I just find it quite fitting that one of our broadcasts this hits on Burns Night itself.
There's like two sides to the academic thing here. You know, there's a serious side to Burns and a kind of almost like cheesy traditional side. You know, what we used to call the shortbread tin tartan tat. You know, anything Scottish, wrap it up and sell it. But major figures, so like in American history, like Abraham Lincoln, I think, had Burns in his in their libraries and were very into the idea of see yourself as others see you and all that kind of almost philosophy running through the agrarian kind of culture of the guy. Although in his history he was a member of many lodges, he was a figure. Came to Edinburgh and met a lot of worthies, Walter Scott and all that. I wouldn't say I know him inside out, but we were introduced to him in school. There was this kind of feeling of like, he's our national poet. You've got to learn a wee bit of this stuff. Bad neighbours who were really into him, who were from a previous generation, and I was introduced to that as well. So he's filtering about there all the time, influencing things in various ways, becoming a kind of cultural figure. To associate food with him and stuff like that, it's really curious. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. But there's loads you can say about this guy and this kind of day.
The next post.
Sorry, Harry, can I just say one more thing?
On you go.
Yeah, there was just one more thing. It's just come back to me. What I wanted to say was like I'm watching cultural representations of autism on TV series, you know, and one of them is Astrid and Murder in Paris, the French series later made into Patience in the UK series based in York. And they often promote this idea that autistic people can't understand poetry and don't like it. This is the side of sort of neurodiversity or autism, which is like into the rational, into facts, into accuracy, you know, and poetry is kind of beyond that kind of thinking. But I don't think that fully applies across the spectrum. Oh, look what I just did there.
That's an interesting point you brought up there. You're saying that, although I would not be surprised that someone says that because many people, because many autistic people are kind of literal thinking, it's like poetry doesn't make sense, so it'd be hard to read. You know, I'm quite literal in many ways, but I just look at poetry like a song or, you know, any feature of anything, you know, to read or watch or listen. I suppose I would. Don't get me wrong. When I first discovered Burns, I thought it was a lot of nonsense. Tearmus? What? What are you talking about? I suppose there was a bit of that in school. And I think because in school it's about, right, you listen to me. This is a very important man. So whether you like it or not, you're going to read it and you're going to read it aloud and you're going to read it over as homework and whatever, and you're going to appreciate because it's a Scottish cultural thing. So yeah, I can sort of identify with what you just said, Raymond.
Well, again, you brought up the idea of cultural indoctrination, the authority figure, which again is something we resist at times, although I'm not going to generalise, I feel I do. I think the thing with autistics not liking poetry is this idea of the metaphor and communication styles and not really being in that mode of thinking. And what really happens there, and it's revealing, is that if you can make a kind of rational, scientific, mathematical type person see the poetry in how they think, then poetry becomes acceptable because it's not being seen as something as a person resists. It's it's part of their mode of thinking. It's like something Joe said earlier in the previous thing, but it's not coming back to me. There are ways you can invert or reverse or turn around ways of thinking that you think are just so rigid, but if you're just exposed to a way of like taking your way of thinking into somebody else's way of thinking, you can get it. And get it is the operative phrase here.
I love poetry. And it's not all poetry, but sometimes people put words together that mean so much more than the words and the simplicity, and convey a meaning in few words that really touches me. And it isn't about logic, it's about association and the sound of words and the taste of words, or the visual images that words, if they're put together, in a way, make for me. And I think that appreciation of some poetry is an autistic thing, but poetry is vast, and much of it flies over me and doesn't touch me at all.
I think what Robbie said in the text, how I like some poetry songs are basically poetry set to music, and I agree with that. There are couplets and parts of songs that I can regularly refer to, and that's when times are good and when times are bad. There's some people. There's a song by Bob Dylan called "Positively 4th Street," and that really says my feelings towards some of the people who didn't treat me quite as well as they should have done in the past.
The next post is from Neurodivergent Girl. It's a personal blog. Married, mum of 2 boys, diagnosed ADHD and autistic, low support needs. This is a safe space. And shared the following, which is a quote from a gem tattoo. And it says, the neurodivergent urge to over-explain myself during misunderstandings to try to avoid further misunderstandings, but then confusing people in the process, which does in fact cause, you guessed it, more misunderstandings. What's people's thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, that can become a loop. I wouldn't say this is totally me because I learned very quickly to give up trying. You know, um, sometimes I just accept that it's just not going to transmit, and there may be other ways of communicating. Uh, a misunderstanding itself can be an education. It can, if you just change your perspective. So, but I'm amused by this because there is a loop. I mean, it's no fun. The loop can get really horrible, um, and you can really take it internally that you're just not being understood, and it's very frustrating.
Yes, I've been in positions where I believe a misunderstanding's taken place where it might not have happened. And even if it has, it's this sort of urge to try and fix it. But the more you try and fix it, it's like you're making a drama out of something that needn't be one in the grand scheme of things. But you just feel the need, or I felt the need, to correct things, especially if it's been done from, I feel, my own mistake, genuine mistake, whatever, saying the wrong thing to someone, or using the wrong word, or saying something in a tone that sounds sarcastic rather than genuine, is one example, and then try to fix it. It's like I've had that few situations. I can remember talking to someone loud in a pub and they were asking me a question and they thought I was shouting at them. So they just went, basically says, "Oh, I'm not talking to you," and they walked away. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, do I go after that person and try and fix the misunderstanding? But in hindsight, and thinking now, I didn't do so. But I always think about that and whether in our situation or a similar situation where I would do that and maybe make things worse. Like, oh, I didn't mean it that way, or it's like it just seems to it just muddies things, and sometimes it's a misunderstanding, and if it's that not much of a consequence, you try and teach yourself to not overthink about it, even though sometimes it can wake you up at night, even 10, 20 years later, depending what it was.
For
We
me,
were
this is
talking.
very context dependent. Off we go.
No, Jules, go ahead.
No, mate, I don't want you to lose your thread. Go.
It was just something we were talking about in the previous hour about truth, and very often we will, I don't hate generalizing, but I will, as an autistic person, speak truth, and that is very inconvenient in certain social settings and can lead to a lot of complications.
Yeah, amen to that. You're right there, Ray, in my feelings. I think what this post says is very context dependent, because in a trusting relationship or a loving relationship or a long-term relationship or a family relationship, we can allow ourselves the need to fully explain things if people give us that latitude. And if people do give us that latitude, I think it is a way and a framework to get to be understood and to solidify the relationship in a better way. It's difficult to accept an autistic person trying to fully explain a misunderstanding. I know it myself. I'm always doing it. But it's not going to work in the outside world very well, and we have to not mask, but treat other people differently to how we treat the loved ones around us.
In the text, Robbie says, sometimes you have to accept someone is not going to change their point of view. The autistic person will always be blamed. Sometimes the best answer is to do nothing and never to try to fix things while you are angry. You can't think logically while you are angry.
I like how Robbie approaches his social scenarios on an even keel. He believes everybody's included and communication is even. But what we encounter sometimes is there are societal rules in conversation, and we meet that resistance at times. And yeah, but I really do admire how Robbie sees it. He's just an equal participant in the conversation and in society. I think it's often denied to people.
It's a good point, though, about never try to fix things while you're angry. Not even just angry, while you're upset, while you're, you know, in hysteria in a way, because you feel, oh, I've got to fix this. So you're all wound up and you don't think logically. You're just trying to, basically, what you do, or what I've done when I have been doing it, is apologise. Even if I've made a mistake on here, it's like, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, or sorry, I said a wrong word. And it's just like, I felt the need and feel the need to apologise. And the weird thing about that is apologising makes you feel worse. Because you're going, you're saying you're apologising far too much, or you're apologising without the need to actually apologise. It's, it just, as I say, it just creates, it's like a snowball effect.
Robbie says in the text he's not in an equal position. He's just learnt his limitations in response to what I just said. Yeah, and I accept that, Robbie. Yeah, but sorry, you're not in an equal position. No, that's true. But I like the idea that you want to be. You know what I mean? You don't approach the situation. I think sometimes we can approach like victims, or not victims, but like lesser parties. You know, um, like we have to compromise and be compliant. Yeah, and I just like how you don't. You know, and that's what I was picking up from it. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
It takes a lot of restraint, but I've learnt from many years of learned experience. And if I try and fix situations, they're not going to change their view. Their ableism's built in. So if I try and explain away and try and fix it, it just digging the hole deeper. So I've been learning to walk away, ignore posts on Facebook, and that has been the beginnings of things slightly improving.
Ain't that the truth?
What I've just realised as well, and maybe we are talking that way anyway, but at first I was talking about, speaking, the misunderstandings in speech, talking. But there's been misunderstandings in text, misunderstandings in emailing, and how something is being described. Is he trying to fix that or feeling the need to fix that? It's a lot worse when you're speaking, because it just creates this big long trail of drama, which probably isn't really needed, but it's just, is it the artistic urge to right a wrong? Because I think we've talked about that before. It's like the injustice. It's like if you've done wrong, you feel bad for it, even if it hasn't done anything wrong, but you just feel you've done something wrong. It's like you feel this urge to fix it, not just because you're embarrassed, but because you feel bad that you might have caused hurt, or at least caused an unintentional negative consequence.
Yeah, and that might be that first line, Harry, the neurodivergent urge to over explain oneself. Yeah. As Robbie says in text, is being right worth the loss of the relationship? Yeah, I kind of get that, Robbie, because for me, relationship is a lot more than what we communicate through words and text.
I think the other thing there is that we all know that autistic people in general have fewer connections with other people than regular folk. So we have to prize those relationships and, to some extent, compromise in things that particularly are difficult for us. But we must realize that the relationships are valuable and we have fewer of them. So, unfortunately, that's a price. That's something we have to understand.
Yeah, one final thing Robbie's put in the text is right and wrong is opinion, not fact. I would echo that.
Exactly, and I echo that too.
The next post is from When My Brain Is Messy, who's an author, an AUDHD children's picture book author and mum of 2. And shared the following. I've been in a shopping centre 3 times this week. I'm not okay. What's your thoughts?
Years ago, they opened a really big West Key, it's called, in Southampton, and I just could never go in there. And the first few times, I only go to Southampton about once a month, but the first few times I literally just walked in the door and walked out again. It took me a long time to go further in there. And to be honest with you, there's some public toilets in there, but you have to go up. You have to go into the centre and then up a couple of floors to get to them. But it's big and it's shiny and it's bright and it's loud and there's lots of people there. So it took me, like I say, a few attempts just to be able to get more than a few feet inside the door.
Yeah, this week I've been in a few shopping centres which I go to regularly. Well, not even a shopping centre, stores, big stores. And I just found the lights too much. Actually having to wear sunglasses when I go into these places. So it's really, I wouldn't say it was quite triggering. It is to a certain extent. It unsettles me. And I feel like I'm buzzing a bit after it, a bit high energy. So I'm not enjoying it. Could be age, could be my eyesight. I'm going to get that checked out quite soon. But I've had things like this before, but in smaller scale. And that's only one aspect to go into these places. There's the intensity using the checkouts as well, can be just mad.
Just to say hello, Pete Moans. Sorry for missing your comment earlier. I was saying hello, so just hello back. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, the idea of the loss of the corner shop as well is a thing, that intimacy and neighbourhood kind of community thing, less stressful environments. Kind of were wiped away by the big store. It's the economics of it. And yeah, I must add, some people, including, neurodivergent autistic people, absolutely love shopping malls.
I think there's also a thing Raim will understand is the independent record store and getting in there and chatting with people. I mean, that's a great thing.
I have found shopping centres harder to enter or cope with as I got older. I remember I used to enjoy going to Glasgow and going to the St Enoch shopping centre in the centre of Glasgow, and even going into one of the shops, which is like a gadget shop, and it was always busy. I wasn't on my own right enough, I was with friends, so it was a sort of kind of safe sort of space thing. But it's still a lot to deal with, being somewhere that was quite busy and not actually buying anything either. It was just somewhere to go and see, somewhere to go and meet. But, if we did anything, it'd be go to McDonald's or go somewhere for something to eat and sit there for a little while and then go out and wander about the city centre in general. And I just couldn't do that now. When I'm going through the city centre for whatever reason, I just kind of go through as quickly as I can to where I'm going, like the coffee shop or the pub or meeting place. I don't hang about, but there was a time where I actually hung about quite comfortably. And I'm certainly not a big fan of supermarkets. I certainly wouldn't go 3 times a week. I'm not even a big fan of the convenience store down, where I live, which is basically a mini supermarket. It's just so much to deal with, it feels. And generally, when I shop, it's online to keep away from that anxiety. And I find that a bit frustrating because it'd be good to go to a shop and then see something that you wouldn't have seen if you were doing it online, because when I do it online, I just do the same things all the time. I don't really look for anything else. But it's just amazing how intense and how anxiety provoking it can be. Whether it just be sounds, lights, just all manner of things. People.
That's the system, the way we're like the end of a supply chain. And what you were saying there, you mentioned the word pub there, because I was recalling when I used to love going to shopping centres, it was because I was just out of a pub and I was waiting at the bus station to get my bus home and stocking up on groceries. So waltzing through the shopping mall, after a good session in the pub was one of these altered experiences. But you can see where that ends up if your life is totally dependent on being soused to get through it.
Before I ever saw the inside of a shopping centre, I saw George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and that always just people shuffling around. The dead are still shuffling around in there, and someone says, "Why do they come here?" And they say, "Because it was an important place while they were alive," and I guess it's instinct. And when I see inside of shopping centres, I just see Dawn of the Dead, and I can hear the song "The Gonk" going through my head as well.
It's the fear of missing out, GR, and there's an odd little tangent here, an autistic tangent, as I used to collect photos of what they used to call haunted shopping centres, which were like old shopping centres that were no more, but the buildings still remained, and people went in and took photographs of the inside of them empty and various lighting effects. And I found the one I used drunkenly in Fife in the great town of Kirkcaldy. It's online, and it's good fun looking at some of those pics.
Yeah, someone posted one of the Bargate Centre in Southampton. I mean, it was literally a 10-day wonder, and then there was no one there. It's been demolished. There was one in Ocean Village in Southampton. Again, after a while, there was no one in there. And there's one called the Marlins in Southampton, and you can just walk through there, and there's just no one in there. There's a CEX in there and a few tat stores, not tattoos, tat stores, and you just look at it and you think, well, this one's going to go next. That they just seem to pop up, and then they're disposable. I think shopping malls are disposable.
And the piped music as well. It's almost like false memories.
Robbie came up with a few things in the text. I don't eat it alone if it's not as necessary. I refuse to use self-checkouts, which I totally understand. It seems to be against the grain with me, in a way, you know, it's, you know, you're doing the thing yourself, but it's also doing something of a job. But it's just the whole thing is complicated, it feels, and it embarrasses you. Well, it embarrasses me, so I prefer not to use them. And there was other things like the physical shopping. You know, almost never buy CDs in physical shops, but usually buy food in physical shops and other things online. I suppose with me, most things I do is online now. It just seems more handier that way. And the only thing I do, like physically in shops, is I feel that I need to do at that particular time. I try to avoid it as much as possible. And it's a good feeling to know that you have the choice of not going into the physical shop, but also feel kind of sad that by less people going into these places, it means that they're looked upon as there's not a need for them, so they end up closing, and someone will always miss out, either because that's what they do, shopping-wise, and also things like jobs and things.
I honestly have trouble eating food that's prepared by other people, especially in restaurants and outside, and yet I'll gladly eat a Greggs sausage roll.
Can't eat in someone else's house. Cannot do it. I can eat out of restaurants and chippies and all that, but if I go to someone's house, I can just about drink a cup of tea. If they start cooking food and then serve it up in front of me, I'm literally gagging. I just can't do it.
I haven't been to a chippy in about 15 years because the last time I went, I was ill after it.
Robbie
Used
does.
to-
Sorry, I've just put Robbie's shared a text saying most items I buy are specialists and shops are too far away from where he lives, so that's another reason why the online is a better option.
There used to be a pie shop round the back of Southampton bus station, and when I've seen these old thing, heritage, Southampton heritage online, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, that was great, that pie shop." I had a pie out there twice, and I was so ill afterwards, and I don't think it was a coincidence. So maybe my stomach wasn't designed to eat pies from there.
Just what Robbie was saying about specialist shops. I've been visiting my aunt who's 93 in hospital, and we were reminiscing about things like the old type of specialist shops we used to go to, like what we used to call dry salters, and places where you would buy brooms and you could fill up your paraffin can for your paraffin heaters and various weird items. And they're few and far between now. It's all online. Uh, because she was admiring the hospital staff using these extended mops for the floors. And she thought, I want one of them. Where do you get them? And she was told to look in a certain village just outside Edinburgh that still had one of those shops. So, old curiosities.
We've got two hardware shops, both barely 2 miles from here. You can get all sorts of those sort of things in there. And in Tottenham, they've got an old-fashioned sweet shop. All it does is sell sweets. And whenever I go past, it always seems to be shut. But on occasion, I've been in there. It's the only place, I think, round here that you can buy Victory V lozenges.
Wow.
The next post is from The next post is from Neuro Universe. We are who we are, which is a blogger community organisation. At Neuro the Universe, we are who we are. Our mission is to support neurodivergent individuals and their families through inclusive holistic and community-based approaches. And they shared the following: sensory play, grounding moments, connection. After a full-on week, sometimes what our nervous systems need most is to slow right down. Isabel shared that in class they'd been making Roman pots, but hers sadly broke when moving it. So today I surprised her with some clay so we could try again together. Of course I had to make one too. Gave me a Dirty Dancing vibe. But yeah, I'm definitely not a pro. There's something incredibly grounding about sensory play. Rolling, shaping, creating with our hands. It helps regulate busy minds, release tension, and reconnect after long, demanding days. That said, when the clay started drying on our skin, we were both very quick to wash our hands. That sensory input was a hard no. With the household feeling a bit poorly, this gentle Saturday activity gave us space to connect, reset, and just be. No pressure, no perfection, just learning through doing. Ta-da. Now the challenge is making sure these ones don't get dropped. At Neuro Universe, we believe sensory experiences are powerful tools for grounding, regulation, and well-being for children and adults alike. We all deserve moments to pause and reset. I'm currently recording content and making sensory play videos to inspire you at home. Watch this space. If there's anything you like to know how to make, let me know and I'll make it happen. And they've shared some pictures of the clay making. What's your thoughts?
I'm wondering what Robbie thinks about this, because I think I understand that Robbie likes doing things, and we've spoken often about crafts in the sensory kind of, equilibrium of being active in something like this. Yeah.
I used to enjoy doing pottery at school and evening classes. It was very much like the crochet I do now. It's something where if you made a mistake, you could put it right. And buildings I made was exactly the same method as the cool pots. And I only stopped doing it because the government took the subsidies away and it just became far too expensive.
How easy is it to get access to clay and things like that? I often think, like, and it's kind of related to the previous discussion, it's like when we find there's a lack of something in our community, something we might have an urge or desire to participate in, you go, well, where's the resource for that? Where can you get clay? Where can I start making things? I mean, often the onus is on you to go and get the supplies yourself and bring them home and do it at home on your own. It's often nice to just be in that kind of coexisting group activity, given that people respect, noise and all that, so, because this post was really dwelling a bit on sensory feelings. And often when we participate in social settings to do these things, we have to kind of deal with the sensory issues of being with others who might be a wee bit random and noisy.
For me, the kind of clay work I did it was needed firing and you needed all the equipment. So without a class, it wasn't possible. And a lot of classes now, it's a predetermined short course where you're told exactly what you're going to make, which is, I don't enjoy that kind of rigid structure.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? The thing that's been described in the post is about doing something you want to do, not being told, instructed, and basically told that what you must do. Because I do remember being in some kind of classes in school, there's things like woodwork and all that. And there were some kind of thing, art as well. And a lot of it was quite interesting to me. But at the end of the day, they told you what you should do to basically get pass marks. If you do this certain thing, you're compared to everyone else, and who's the best out of that gets pass marks in terms of a hierarchy. Let's just say 1 to 4, 1 to 5. And obviously that takes the enjoyment out of it. But even you go to kind of clubs and groups, there's that element where you're told or advised on what to do. So there's no freedom. And without that freedom, you can't enjoy it. And without that, it just creates another stress. But it's good you get these examples, though, of when you're allowed to be free, when you're allowed to relax, you're allowed to think about how you feel you can get relaxed and think of ways of doing so. It's like there's so much out there. And all society needs now is they just need a more open mind. I know sometimes they try, well, not sometimes, it seems like they try to reverse, anytime they open a door, they want to shut it back in your face, saying, no, we need a bit more control. But the thing is, if you throw control in people, it not just makes people's life miserable, it just makes people not want to do anything or not feel to be able to do anything. But if there's a bit of freedom, there's a lot more that people can do for themselves, of course, as well as for others.
Yeah, I agree with you, Harry. I've always been seeking this kind of introductory kind of setting where you can go and explore creative arts and crafts. Because honestly, I've spent most of my life thinking I'm not that crafty, I'm not artistic because I can't draw. Um, I have no kind of skill or aptitude in those directions. And yet I feel a desire and a need to create and maybe produce things from things. So I do collage a lot in various ways, mentally, physically, poetically, musically, writing, imagery, cutting up old papers and magazines. But just to have exposure to something you might not have tried and find it, that's the one for you. But as you say, they very often structure it in such a way that you're aiming for a certain kind of projected goal, and that can be really off putting.
I think of it, pot making a pot as a bit like certain situations, certain autism situations where you've started off as this lump and you're gradually building up and the sides are coming up and everything looks smooth, and then it starts to flop about and things, you just can't stop it from flopping about and it collapses and it's a meltdown. That's, I've always seen making pottery as sometimes analogous to autism.
Again, I think that's a situation you're getting in maybe above your head. The expectations are too much. It's a slow intro of like, deal with this stage, build, 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 and get there. But to leap right in is often can be heartbreaking. I love to be heartbreak symbol right beside the phrase of mentioning where the person broke their pot by dropping it.
The next post is from AUDHD Unfiltered, health and wellness website. Canadian, autistic, ADHD and unfiltered. Welcome into my brain and daily life. And they share the following. You don't have to explain yourself 100 times. You don't need to twist yourself into knots just to sound reasonable or clear enough. You don't have to write a whole thesis every time you set a boundary just to prove it's valid. You're allowed to draw a line, a real line, and say, this is too much for me. And that should be enough. No debate required, no PowerPoint needed, no need to be completely burned out before someone takes you seriously. Your feelings matter. Your boundary exists because something in you said stop, and that alone makes it legitimate. Your boundary deserves respect, even if the other person doesn't understand it, even if it bothers them, even if it brings up their own stuff. You have nothing to prove, just yourself to respect. What's your thoughts?
I've mentioned this before. Initially after my mother died and I was trying to cope with things, my doctor said to me, if you're unsure, just say no. Don't say don't know, don't agree for the sake of agreeing. Just if you're unsure, don't be pushed, just say no.
Yeah, it's sort of like the gate at the end of the garden, isn't it? It's like you can't just let every Tom, Dick, and Harry in. Although I do like at times being absorbent, but you can get pushed into very, very demanding requests upon your time and energy.
It's that word, no. It's a difficult word to say, in my experience, without feeling that you're being offensive or feeling it's a negative thing towards a person or something that's been asked of you. Sometimes it feels like a failing because you're saying no. Or if it's like if you're invited out somewhere and it's something that might be absolutely great if you're in the right mood, if you say no, it's like you feel you're being a spoil sport. Or if someone's asking you to do something for them, complete a task, and you've no energy, and you say no, you feel bad for not being helpful. It's just I've had that myself. I can't remember who said it to me, but it was somebody in the medical profession. It was like a nurse or a support worker in terms of, the medical the mindset is that it's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. Particularly these days where there seems to be more and more people, in the streets at times, as things are just so busy and people in such a rush. It's just need boundaries. And you need boundaries within your own boundaries as well. And not to feel bad about it. And not having to explain why. That's what this post is saying is you shouldn't need to give a big explanation for it. If someone says no, if someone wants you to respect their boundaries, do it. You may be told why some other time, but you shouldn't have to over-explain yourself because I think that's how many people feel, how many autistic people feel. Talk about it. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And sometimes it's just not the right time to explain, to put it into words because you're trying to, you don't feel right, but sometimes you can't put it into words at that particular time. And that frustrates people. But that doesn't make it you're wrong. It just makes it's just the situation. And boundaries must be respected.
Yeah, you get this at Christmas. Sorry. You get this at Christmas time where everyone's saying, if you say, I don't do Christmas, that you get this old Scrooge humbug and all this. And I give them a rude reply these days, but some things it's just overwhelming. And if you want to go off and do what you want to do, you carry on doing that. But don't browbeat me because I just don't do that sort of thing.
Is this maybe hinting at that pleasing thing? Of like, I'm sitting here thinking, why would somebody not think they could set boundaries? It's almost like there are people, it's saying there's people who feel they cannot set boundaries. They shouldn't set boundaries because of they've got to conform and comply and be pleasing to others, to please others. It's just a thought I had there. But Robbie's putting a lot in the text here. In response to this one, he was supposed to accept what others had chosen. If you explain, people come up with their solution and make you sound unreasonable and ungrateful if you don't accept their solution. Were these the only two responses to this post, Robbie?
Many times a lot of things I wasn't even asked. They just imposed choices, used the excuse to be doing what's best for me, and I was just supposed to accept what they decided was best for me.
Yeah, it's like in that kind of relationship, you can't really assert boundaries, can you? Or you can, but it's difficult.
And when it comes to professionals, they use their qualifications to override your experience.
Yes, that will happen many times. And it doesn't have to just be professionals, it can be someone with your best interests at heart, even a friend. And sometimes people make assumptions of how you behave or what you say without exactly knowing the full story. And those assumptions are damaging because with a lot of it isn't good intended, but a lot of good intentions are made, but it's misunderstandings. And when the boundary thing is ignored and someone saying no is ignored, even the best intentions of counter-attacking the no answer by what they think is a better solution, it does a lot more damage than people realise. It's like you're forcing someone to do something, even though they've already told you about boundaries.
A frequent one I have done to me is about use of phones. Now, I don't use phones because I can't cope with the overwhelm and the unpredictability. And it doesn't matter how much I say, oh, you just have to learn to use the phone as invalidating my experience. The fact that I'm reluctant to even hold someone else's phone if they're showing me something, and there's no way I'd make a call or answer it because I would just freeze. The brain would shut down. But it's come back to me time and time again because neurotypical people don't have any problem. They insist it's just a learning issue, and it's about their preference rather than my need. That it's easier for the services and people for me to comply with their favoured method of communication.
Well, thanks everyone. It's been a good discussion tonight. And thanks for people who shared the posts that we've talked about tonight in this podcast. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 25th of January, 2026, which is part of the Spectrum Voices conversation, which is live every Sunday from 5:55 p.m. to 7 p.m. to 7 p.m. UK time. So thank you once again, and I'll see you next time. Good night.